In J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, few substances are as legendary or hold as much allure as Mithril. The very name evokes an air of mystery and wonder, a metal that was said to be as light as a feather, yet stronger than steel. Known by several names, including Moria silver and True silver, Mithril was revered for both its physical properties and its ethereal beauty. Its radiant, silver-like sheen was unlike anything else in Middle-earth, and its rarity only heightened its desirability. The metal's qualities made it the subject of songs, tales, and legends passed down through generations of elves, dwarves, and men. Yet despite its unmatched attributes, Mithril was not commonly found in weapons, armor, or everyday objects. Why would such an extraordinary material, seemingly perfect for crafting items of war and protection, be so sparingly used? The answer lies in the scarcity and danger associated with Mithril. Unlike iron, which was abundant and could be found in many regions of Middle-earth, Mithril was confined to a single source, the deep mines of Khazad-dûm. This isolated location was a hidden treasure trove beneath the misty mountains, where the dwarves toiled tirelessly to extract the precious metal. The difficulty of mining Mithril, combined with its limited availability, ensured that only the wealthiest and most powerful individuals or societies had access to it. The elves, renowned for their craftsmanship and love of beauty, particularly prized Mithril for its aesthetic and functional value, crafting exquisite works of art and war from the rare metal. The allure of Mithril extended far beyond its physical characteristics. Its scarcity made it a symbol of power and prestige. To possess Mithril was to hold a piece of the extraordinary, a material that was not just rare, but practically magical. It was more than a metal. It was a legacy, a piece of history that connected its owner to the ancient world of the dwarves and the craftsmanship of the elves. Yet despite this, Mithril was not widely seen across Middle-earth. It became the prized possession of the few who could afford it, treasured more for its rarity than for any practical use. Those who wore Mithril armor or possessed Mithril artifacts were viewed with awe and envy, for they held a piece of a world that was slowly fading into legend. Mithril was first discovered in the depths of Khazad-dûm, the greatest of the dwarven realms. The kingdom, nestled deep beneath the misty mountains, was already a place of power and industry when the dwarves stumbled upon veins of this extraordinary metal. Mithril's discovery catapulted Khazad-dûm into an era of unprecedented prosperity. The dwarves, already skilled miners and craftsmen, began extracting and working with Mithril, crafting objects of unparalleled beauty and utility. The discovery of Mithril marked a golden age for the dwarves, as their kingdom became the central hub of trade and wealth in Middle-earth. Elves, too, were drawn to the allure of Mithril, their own smiths crafting intricate designs using the radiant metal. However, despite the wealth it brought, the mining of Mithril was no easy task. Mithril was not found in surface veins like other metals. It was buried deep beneath the earth, hidden in the dark and dangerous recesses of Khazad-dûm. The deeper the dwarves dug, the more perilous their work became. Extracting Mithril required venturing into the deepest parts of the mines, far below the inhabited regions of the dwarven city. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm were no strangers to hardship, but even they began to recognize the dangers that came with mining such a precious material. Over time, as the dwarves dug deeper into the mountains, they unwittingly disturbed something far more dangerous than rock and stone. In their relentless pursuit of more Mithril, they awoke Durin's Bane, a Balrog of Morgoth, a creature of shadow and flame that had slumbered since the First Age. The awakening of the Balrog brought destruction to Khazad-dûm. The once great kingdom was overrun, and the dwarves were forced to flee, leaving behind their precious mithril mines and the riches they had worked so hard to uncover. Khazad-dûm fell into ruin, later to be known as Moria, a dark and haunted place feared by all who passed near it. The fall of Khazad-dûm was a catastrophic event not just for the dwarves, but for all of Middle-earth. With the kingdom abandoned and the mines of Mithril sealed off by darkness and danger, the primary source of the precious metal was lost. Mithril, once a relatively rare but obtainable resource, became a treasure of legend. The metal that had fueled Khazad-dûm's prosperity and prestige now existed only in the few remaining objects forged before the kingdom's fall. The dwarves, scattered across Middle-earth, had no means of acquiring more mithril, and the flow of the metal into the world ceased almost entirely. In the aftermath of Khazad-dûm's fall, the scarcity of mithril became even more pronounced. No other place in Middle-earth had veins of the metal, and no other people had the skill and expertise to mine it. The dwarves who survived fled to other mountain strongholds, such as Erebor or the Iron Hills, but none of these locations held the same reserves of mithril as Khazad-dûm. The elves, who had long prized mithril for their art and craftsmanship, could no longer acquire it, and the few mithril items that existed became even more valuable, passed down through generations as priceless heirlooms. The loss of Khazad-dûm marked the beginning of Mithril's transition from a rare but tangible resource to a near-mythical relic. Without access to the mines, the creation of new mithril items ceased. What few pieces remained became symbols of the lost greatness of the dwarves and the elves' long history of craftsmanship. Mithril became something to be admired from afar, an object of envy and reverence, but not something that could be easily acquired or used. The value of mithril skyrocketed, not just because of its physical properties, but because it was now tied to the legacy of a lost age. As time passed and the world of Middle-earth grew more dangerous and divided, Mithril's remaining artifacts became even more precious. Wars, political upheavals, and the rise of Sauron in Mordor created an unstable environment in which ancient treasures were often lost, stolen, or destroyed. Many mithril items were hidden away by those who possessed them, kept safe in secret vaults, or passed down through families as symbols of power and prestige. The dwarves, who had once been the primary source of mithril, no longer had the means to mine or forge it, and their remaining treasures became relics of a bygone era. Even if one could acquire mithril, forging it into usable forms was no easy task. The metal, while light and strong, required exceptional skill to work with. Only the most accomplished smiths, such as the dwarves and the elves, had the knowledge to shape it into weapons or armor. The process was laborious and often reserved for only the most important works. As a result, even those who possessed mithril often found it difficult to use. The knowledge and expertise needed to work with mithril were becoming increasingly rare, further limiting its use across Middle-earth. Mithril, while still prized for its incredible qualities, became more a symbol of the past than a material for the present. The remaining items forged from the metal, like Frodo's mithril shirt or the gates of Moria, were relics, cherished not just for their practical value, but for their connection to the ancient world. These items became part of the legends and stories that were passed down through generations, their worth growing as the memories of the great dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm and the age of elven craftsmanship faded into history. The loss of mithril was not just the loss of a precious metal, it was the loss of a connection to the height of craftsmanship in Middle-earth. As the Third Age drew to a close and the influence of elves and dwarves diminished, Mithril became one more treasure lost to time. Its remaining pieces, scattered across the world, were guarded by a few, passed down as heirlooms, or hidden away in forgotten vaults. With the fall of Khazad-dûm and the growing darkness in the world, Mithril passed from the realm of practical use into the realm of legend, a symbol of a once great age that had long since passed. Mithril, though rare and difficult to obtain, left an indelible mark on the history of Middle-earth through the creation of legendary artifacts. These items, forged from the precious metal, were not just practical tools, but objects imbued with immense symbolic and cultural significance. Among the most famous of these Mithril relics is Frodo Baggins's Mithril shirt, which became one of the central symbols of his journey to destroy the One Ring. This intricately crafted mail shirt was more than just a piece of armor. It represented the legacy of the dwarves, the ingenuity of their craftsmanship, and the weight of history that followed Frodo on his perilous quest. The Mithril shirt was originally gifted to Frodo by Bilbo Baggins, who had received it during his own adventures with the dwarves of Erebor. The shirt, made of finely woven mithril links, was incredibly lightweight and strong, a perfect fusion of beauty and utility. Unlike the bulky armor made from lesser metals, this mail shirt could be worn comfortably beneath ordinary clothing, making it both practical and inconspicuous. Yet despite its subtle appearance, the Mithril shirt was nearly impervious to harm. It could deflect arrows and blades, protecting Frodo from potentially fatal injuries on several occasions throughout the Fellowship's journey. One of the most dramatic moments in Frodo's journey came when the Mithril shirt saved his life during an attack by a monstrous cave troll in the mines of Moria. The troll's spear, aimed directly at Frodo's heart, struck with tremendous force, but the Mithril shirt absorbed the blow, leaving Frodo stunned but unharmed. This moment highlighted the extraordinary protective power of Mithril, showing that even in the face of overwhelming danger, the shirt was a shield that could defy the most brutal attacks. Gandalf later remarked that the Mithril shirt was worth more than the entire Shire, a testament not only to its material value, but to the history and craftsmanship it represented. Frodo's Mithril shirt was not just a tool of protection, but a symbol of the ancient ties between the dwarves of Erebor and the world beyond their mountain home. The shirt had originally been forged in the halls of Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, where the dwarves had amassed great wealth and created masterpieces of metallurgy before the dragon Smaug drove them from their kingdom. The shirt, therefore, was a relic of a past age, a reminder of the glory of Erebor before its fall, and its passing from Bilbo to Frodo represented the continuation of that legacy. As Frodo carried the shirt on his journey, it became a symbol of resilience, endurance, and the connection between the various peoples of Middle-earth, dwarves, hobbits, and the free peoples united in a common cause. Another legendary example of Mithril craftsmanship was the Doors of Morii, an architectural marvel that showcased the unique collaboration between elves and dwarves. These doors, which marked the western entrance to Khazad-dûm, were inlaid with Ithildin, a magical substance that only revealed itself in the light of the moon or stars. The doors were crafted by the dwarven smith Narvi and inscribed with designs by Celebrimbor, one of the greatest elven craftsmen of the Second Age. Mithril was used to frame these doors, symbolizing the strength and durability of the metal, but also its beauty and its connection to the deep bond between the elves and dwarves, particularly in the era before their friendship was strained by events like the War of the Last Alliance. The Moria doors were both functional and symbolic. On a practical level, they served as a barrier, protecting the dwarves of Khazad-dûm from unwanted intrusion, and their magical properties made them nearly impossible to breach without knowing the correct password. However, the doors were also a statement of unity and artistic collaboration between two races known for their craftsmanship. The fact that mithril was used in their creation only added to their significance, as mithril was not just a metal of practical strength, but one that carried immense cultural weight. The doors became a symbol of the dwarves' skill in mining and metallurgy, and the elves' mastery of enchantment and design, a combination that created one of the most iconic structures in Middle-earth. Beyond Frodo's shirt and the Moria doors, mithril was also used in the creation of one of the most powerful artifacts in Tolkien's legendarium, Nenya, the Ring of Water. Worn by Galadriel, one of the 3 elven rings of power, Nenya was crafted using mithril, which enhanced its beauty and strength. The ring itself symbolized preservation and protection, and its powers were tied to the safety and flourishing of Lothlorien, the hidden elven realm. Galadriel used Nenya to ward off decay and corruption, maintaining Lothlorien as a sanctuary of light and beauty in an increasingly dark world. The choice of mithril as the primary material for Nenya highlighted the metal's association with purity, resilience, and timelessness, qualities that mirrored Galadriel's own role as one of the last great elven leaders of the Third Age. Nenya, like the other 2 elven rings, was designed to be a tool of preservation rather than domination. Unlike the One Ring, which was created by Sauron to control and corrupt, the elven rings were meant to protect and preserve what was good and beautiful in Middle-earth. The use of mithril in Nenya underscored this purpose. Mithril did not corrode or tarnish over time, much like the elves themselves, who were bound to the natural world and its preservation. By wearing Nenya, Galadriel was able to maintain the ageless beauty of Lothlorien, a place that remained untouched by the passage of time or the creeping influence of Sauron. In this way, mithril once again became a symbol not just of physical strength, but of the deeper, more enduring values of Middle-earth's ancient peoples. The few artifacts of mithril that survived into the later ages of Middle-earth became more than just historical relics. They were revered as symbols of a world that was rapidly fading. As the elves prepared to leave Middle-earth and the dwarves retreated into their mountain strongholds, the possession of mithril items became a marker of prestige and heritage. Those who held mithril armor, weapons, or jewelry were seen not just as the owners of rare and valuable objects, but as the guardians of a lost age, an era when magic, beauty, and craftsmanship still flourished in the world. In the case of Frodo's shirt, the piece of mithril mail became a central part of his identity as the ring-bearer. Though Frodo was a simple hobbit, untrained in combat and uninterested in the politics of Middle-earth, the shirt he wore symbolized the protection and support of the free peoples. It was a tangible reminder of the alliance between hobbits, dwarves, and elves, who all played crucial roles in the fight against Sauron. The shirt's journey from Bilbo to Frodo and from Erebor to the Shire reflected the interconnectedness of the world's different cultures and the ways in which even the smallest actions, like gifting a piece of armor, could have far-reaching consequences in the larger struggle against darkness. Mithril, as used in these legendary artifacts, was not just a physical material, It was a symbol of the enduring legacies of the dwarves and elves. Each piece crafted from mithril carried with it the weight of history, representing the pinnacle of Middle-earth's craftsmanship and the collaboration between its peoples. As the ages passed and the power of the elves and dwarves waned, these artifacts became even more precious, serving as reminders of a time when the world was filled with wonder, beauty, and the kind of magic that could turn a simple piece of metal into something extraordinary. As the Third Age of Middle-earth drew to a close, the slow decline of mithril mirrored the fading magic and wonder that once permeated the land. The departure of the elves to the Undying Lands, the diminishing influence of the dwarves, and the rise of men as the dominant race all signaled a profound shift in the world's balance. Mithril, once a tangible reminder of the ancient glories of Middle-earth, became less a practical resource and more a symbol of a lost era. The precious metal, with its unmatched qualities of strength, lightness, and beauty, was no longer available in any significant quantity. What little remained became relics, cherished for their history and the connection they provided to the great ages of the past. The loss of Khazad-dûm, which had once been the only known source of mithril, was a central factor in the metal's decline. When the dwarves were driven from their great underground city by the Balrog of Morgoth, the primary source of mithril in the world was effectively sealed off. Though the deep veins beneath the Misty Mountains still held untapped reserves of the metal, the danger and darkness that pervaded Moria made any further mining impossible. The dwarves, scattered across other mountain strongholds, no longer possessed the means or the desire to reclaim their lost kingdom, and with it, the wealth of mithril that lay beneath its ruined halls. For the dwarves, the loss of Khazad-dûm was a crushing blow not only to their culture and political power, but to their identity as the master miners and craftsmen of Middle-earth. Mithril had been a central part of their economy and their legacy, a material that had brought them wealth, prestige, and influence across the land. Without it, they were left to rely on other more common metals like iron and steel, which, while serviceable, lacked the unique properties that had made mithril so valuable. The dwarves retreated into their remaining strongholds, Erebor, the Iron Hills, and the Blue Mountains, but none of these settlements could ever rival the glory or the resources of Khazad-dûm. Over time, the memory of mithril and the skills required to work with it began to fade, even among the dwarves, who had once been its greatest champions. The decline of mithril was further accelerated by the broader geopolitical and cultural changes taking place in Middle-earth during the later Third Age. The world was becoming more fragmented, and the different races were increasingly isolated from one another. The elves, once the great smiths and craftsmen of the world, were gradually withdrawing to their hidden realms, such as Lothlorien and Rivendell. As their numbers dwindled and their power waned, the elves focused less on the creation of great works of art and craftsmanship, turning instead to the preservation of their remaining sanctuaries from the encroaching darkness of Sauron's influence. Mithril, while still prized for its beauty and strength, became less central to elven culture as their focus shifted towards spiritual and magical preservation rather than material creation. At the same time, the race of men, especially the kingdoms of Gondor and Rohan, found themselves consumed with the wars and political struggles that dominated the Third Age. Sauron's growing power in Mordor and the constant threat of invasion left little room for the pursuit of artistic endeavors. The great kingdoms of men were preoccupied with survival, and while they still revered the ancient treasures of the past, many of which included mithril artifacts,
Their primary concerns were the defense of their borders and the maintenance of their political structures. Mithril, which had once been a symbol of power and wealth, was now an increasingly rare commodity, held in the vaults of kings and lords as heirlooms rather than objects of everyday use. One of the most significant factors contributing to Mithril's decline was the loss of the ancient knowledge required to mine, smelt, and forge it. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm had been the undisputed masters of this craft, and with their exile from Moria, much of that knowledge was lost or forgotten. While some of the surviving dwarven strongholds retained small quantities of mithril, the expertise needed to work with it was becoming a lost art. The process of extracting and refining mithril was far more complex than that of common metals, and without the deep mines of Khazad-dûm, no new sources of mithril could be tapped. Over time, the ability to craft new mithril items became almost impossible, leaving the few remaining artifacts as the last remnants of a bygone age. This loss of knowledge also reflected the broader decline of magic and the mystical arts in Middle-earth. Just as the elves' power waned with the diminishing of the rings of power, so too did the world lose its connection to the magical properties that had once infused its greatest creations. Mithril, with its near-magical qualities, was part of this fading era. The great smiths who had once imbued their works with both beauty and enchantment were no longer creating such items, and the materials they had used, like mithril, were slipping into the realm of legend. As the world became more mundane, the magical and extraordinary elements that had defined Middle-earth's earlier ages faded into memory, leaving only stories of what had once been. The decline of Mithril was also tied to the changing political landscape of Middle-earth. As the forces of darkness grew stronger, particularly under Sauron's influence, many of the great kingdoms of the past were either destroyed or diminished. The northern kingdom of Arnor, once a powerful realm of men, had long since fallen into ruin, and its great treasuries, which may have contained mithril artifacts, were lost to history. Gondor, the southern stronghold of men, also faced a long period of decline under the rule of the stewards, during which many of its ancient relics were lost or forgotten. The wars that ravaged Middle-earth during this time, including the long struggles against Sauron and his allies, resulted in the destruction of many treasures, including mithril items. Battles were fought, cities were sacked, and the once great kingdoms of men and elves were either reduced to shadows of their former selves or erased entirely from the map. By the time of the War of the Ring, mithril had become so rare that it was spoken of mostly in tales and legends. The dwarves who survived in the mountains of Erebor and the Iron Hills had little to no access to new sources of mithril, and even the elves, who had once used the metal in their greatest works, had moved on to other materials. The few surviving mithril items, like Frodo's mail shirt, were seen as priceless heirlooms from an age long past. These items were not just valuable for their physical properties, but for the history they carried. The stories of the dwarves who mined the metal, the elves who shaped it, and the battles in which it had been wielded. Mithril, once a living part of Middle-earth's economy and culture, had become a symbol of the world's fading magic and the loss of its ancient glories. In the Fourth Age, as men rose to dominance and the time of the elves and dwarves faded into history, the remaining pieces of mithril became even more precious. The reign of King Aragorn, Elisar, marked a period of peace and restoration, but even in this time of renewal, mithril remained a lost treasure, a relic of the past rather than a resource for the future. Gondor, under Aragorn's leadership,
may have preserved some mithril items in its treasuries, but there were no longer the means to produce new ones. The elves who remained in Middle-earth withdrew further into isolation, and those who departed for the Undying Lands carried their mithril treasures with them, taking much of the remaining supply out of the mortal world forever. The dwarves, too, retreated into their strongholds, guarding what little mithril they still possessed. Without the ability to mine new sources, and without the great kingdoms of old to trade or share with, mithril became an even more closely guarded secret. Some pieces may have been hidden away in vaults, while others were passed down through generations as heirlooms, but the days when mithril was a practical material for crafting or trade were long gone. In this way, mithril, like many other legendary materials and creatures of Middle-earth, became part of the mythic past, a treasure that was once real but had now passed into legend. The few surviving mithril artifacts, such as Frodo's shirt or Nenya, the Ring of Water, became symbols not just of their own history, but of the entire history of Middle-earth. They were reminders of the time when the world was still filled with magic and wonder, when the elves and dwarves were at the height of their power, and when the free peoples stood united against the forces of darkness. But as the ages passed, these relics were no longer living parts of the world. They were memories of a time that had long since faded into the distant past. In the end, Mithril's fate was tied to the broader fate of Middle-earth itself. As the magic of the world waned and the great peoples of old retreated from the land, Mithril became one more lost treasure of an age gone by. Its remaining pieces, scattered across the world or hidden away in secret, were no longer part of the everyday lives of the people of Middle-earth. Instead, they became symbols of a world that was slowly fading into history, leaving only stories and legends behind.